All right, let's talk about a place you've probably heard of, but maybe don't realize just how important it is. We're diving into the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow stretch of water that is, and this is no exaggeration, one of the most critical and potentially dangerous spots on the entire planet.
So why all the fuss? Well, this number really says it all, 20%. Think about that. 1/5 of the entire world's oil supply flows through this one little waterway every single day. We're talking about 21 million barrels of oil daily. That is just a staggering amount of energy, all squeezed into one very, very tight spot.
And that right there leads to the billion-dollar question. What happens if that flow gets disrupted? Or worse, stops completely? Because as we're about to see, a problem in this tiny strait, well, it doesn't stay there. It sends shock waves that you'll feel at the gas pump, at the grocery store, pretty much everywhere, no matter where you live. You see, it helps to think of the Strait of Hormuz not just as some shipping lane, but as the world's energy jugular. A disruption here isn't just a regional headache, it's a direct threat to the heartbeat of the global economy. And here's how that plays out in your own life. When things get tense in the strait, oil markets get nervous. That uncertainty, all by itself, can make prices shoot up. You feel it immediately when you fill up your car. But the ripple effect keeps going. Higher fuel costs mean it's more expensive to transport literally everything, and that can push up inflation across the board. So let's zoom in a bit. Let's really look at the map and understand the geography that makes this place so incredibly vulnerable. This is where you can see exactly why it's called a choke point. The setup is pretty simple. On one side, you have all these oil-rich nations in the Persian Gulf. On the other side, you have the open ocean and the rest of the world. And the Strait of Hormuz? It's the only way out by sea, wedged right there between Iran to the north and Oman to the south. And that brings us to this term, choke point. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's any narrow geographical passage where movement gets squeezed, gets restricted. And that restriction is precisely what creates this huge vulnerability, both for military ships and for global trade. So just how squeezed are we talking about? At its narrowest point, the shipping lane is only 21 miles wide. Now that might sound like a decent amount of space, but when you're talking about these gigantic, massive oil tankers, it's an incredibly tight squeeze. It makes them slow, predictable, and frankly, very easy targets.
And, when you have a piece of real estate this valuable and this vulnerable, you're going to have a lot of powerful players with a stake in the game. To really get what's going on, you have to understand who they are and what they want.
It's a crowded field. You've got Iran, which controls the entire northern coastline and often uses the strait as a powerful bargaining chip. Then there's the United States, whose navy is a constant presence, trying to protect those international shipping routes. Of course, you have the Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, who need the strait open to get their oil out. And on the other side, you have huge importers like China and the EU who desperately need that oil to come in. Everybody's got skin in this game. So, with all these competing interests packed into such a tiny space, is it any surprise that this region has a long, long history of tension? The conflicts we see today aren't new at all. They're really just the latest chapter in a story that's been going on for decades. I mean, just look at this pattern of instability. This isn't a one-time crisis. It's a cycle that just keeps repeating. Way back in the 80s, you had the tanker war, where ships were literally being targeted. Fast forward to the 2010s, and you have Iran constantly threatening to shut the whole thing down over sanctions. And the tanker attacks in 2019, the seizures we still see today, it's just more of the same. And here's the bottom line from all that history. Every single one of those events, every threat, every attack, every seized tanker has a direct and almost instant impact on the global economy. It's a simple formula. When tension goes up in the strait, oil prices go up. The two are completely 100% linked. So after looking at the geography, the players, and the history, it all leads to the most important question of all. What happens next? What does the future hold for the world's most critical choke point? Well, the potential futures range from pretty good to, frankly, disastrous. The best-case scenario, diplomacy works and things calm down. We could also see more warships from global powers moving in to keep the peace. More likely, though, are these small-scale incidents that cause a temporary panic in the markets. And longer term, you see countries trying to build pipelines to bypass the strait completely. But that worst-case scenario, an all-out military conflict, that terrifying possibility is always there. And all of this leaves us with one last really big question to think about.
When you see the geography, the history, the economic impact, it just forces you to ask, has our modern global economy become dangerously dependent on this single 21-mile wide stretch of water? It's a tough question with no easy answers, but it's one that really affects all of us.